Welcome back to the channel. In this video, we are going to be revisiting our quadratic formula program so you can learn how to use conditional statements in TI Basic. Going into our program editor, we can see that we had our user input 3 variables, and then we used an expression to store that value into our discriminant. We will keep this the same, but we will delete the last 4 lines using the clear button. We will be using the idea that if the discriminant is negative, there are 2 imaginary solutions, if it's 0, there is 1 solution, and if it's positive, there are 2 real solutions. Now before we get started, let's take a look at what commands we're going to be using today. Press the Program button, and in the control menu, you'll see that the first 3 options are if, then, and else. These are the main commands we will be using today to learn conditional statements. To get started, in the line after our discriminant, let's create a condition for imaginary solutions using the if command from the control menu. After the if, we type our condition using our discriminant variable d, and then to press the less than sign, we press second, then math, and it's the 5th option under the test menu, and then ending with our 0. In the next line, you type then from the control menu, and that's the only thing that goes on that line. The next line will be what we want to be outputted. In this case, we'll output a message using the display command, and we'll have it say that there are 2 imaginary solutions. Now this is the part where we need some understanding. If-then statements are pretty self-explanatory, but we need to know when to use else commands for the future. At the end of the video, I will show the complete program just using if-then statements without the else command. But in this tutorial, I will show you how to use else commands. Now before we move on, you also need to know what the end command does from the control menu. Simply put, however many thens you use, you must use an end. At this point in our program, you might be tempted to put an end command to close out our first condition, but again, I'm teaching you how to use the else statements for the future. If we put an end right before an else statement, the program will crash because it is checking conditions from top to bottom. An end tells the calculator that a condition is completely finished. If the calculator closes the condition and then suddenly sees an else by itself on the next line, it gets confused and returns an error. So instead of closing it off early, we're going to use an embedded else. This just tells the program if the first condition isn't true, don't stop, just check the next condition. But where would the end commands go? Since the else keeps the chain going, we save all of our end statements for the very bottom of the program. Because we are going to use 2 then statements in this chain, we will use 2 end commands. For our next 2 lines, we're going to set our second condition for if the first one failed. This is just going to be an if-then statement, and it's going to be for when our discriminant is equal to 0. Remember that if the discriminant is 0, there is 1 real solution at x equals negative b over 2a. So for our next line, write an expression and store it into a variable e. Then we can display this variable using the display command in the next line, again using a comma between our text and our variable. Now for our third and final condition, we are still going to use an else statement and not another if-then statement, since the program already checked the scenarios where the discriminant is less than 0 and equal to 0. Using an else statement would cover the only other possibility, which is where the discriminant is greater than 0 and there are 2 real solutions for x. For this scenario, we can bring back the original 2 expressions we previously deleted and then store them into new variables f and g. We can then display these 2 new variables just like before. And finally, we close off the program with 2 end commands since we are closing 2 if-then statements. Now we can check to see that our program works by executing it from the home screen. For our first example, where a is 1, b is 5, and c is 6, it will output the 2 real solutions for x. If we press enter to run the program again, we can test where a is 1, b is negative 4, and c is 4 to see that x has 1 real solution. And finally, if we test where a is 1, b is 0, and c is 4, it will display the message that there are 2 imaginary solutions. So that's it for today covering conditional statements. In the next video, we will be learning how to use loops. See you then.